G'day everyone, Dan here, and I am so excited for what I'm going to do today. Can finally start the Troopy build. For those of you who saw our last video about when we were in Oz, and we showed that we had purchased this Troopy. It's a 2023 workmate version, and we're going to fit it out and get it ready to travel the parts of Oz that we couldn't see when we'd previously been traveling in our van. Anyone who's watched some of the older videos knows Mads and I did a lot of traveling in our previous van, but obviously a big van can't really go off-road. You know, we did a couple of times, but nothing serious. So the Troopy is going to allow us basically to go and see the parts we couldn't see before. So today the build starts. The only thing that's been done to the Troopy so far, as you might see, is that the Alu Cab roof conversion has been done. There are a few providers here in Sydney who do it. I went with Peak Off-Road, a guy there called Ivan. We're not affiliated with them at all or sponsored in any way, but I would highly recommend them. Ivan was super friendly, quick service, and I mean the job though, which is the most important part, is 10 out of 10. That's gonna allow the inside of the car to have, like, say, kitchen and a fridge and whatnot, and then a couch on one side that'll double as storage. So the plan for today is quite simple. I'm going to fit the underbody water tank, which is boxed up behind me, so I have to open that up and see what has to be done there. So I've gone for a Thornburn 45 litre water tank, which sits behind the fuel tank at the back. So apparently it just bolts straight in to existing holes. So I'm going to open it up now and then see, you know, how easy or difficult this job is going to be. That's a little bonus. I didn't even know that it came with this. So it comes with a water pump. So this is really cool. So this replaces the air vent in the side, and basically you run it to the back, and then it runs, the other side goes to your water tank. And then once this is all tight, this lid obviously won't come out, but then you can lift that up, and then in the back there, you can attach kind of like a hose fitting, so to get water in and then to get water out. That is pretty cool. All the bits and bobs and instructions, which I will definitely be needing. So there we have it. So it's actually a bit heavier than I thought it would be, but it is stainless steel, food grade obviously, as it will be having our water in it. Let's see how this fits. So it's fairly straightforward, I think, how to put this tank in. They do provide instructions, which is pretty useful, but we're at the back of the car now. It's up on the hoist, and if you look in here, you can see that there is the auxiliary fuel tank, and then there's this void of space between the rear bar, and so the tank is basically going to sit around here. So you start off by taking this bolt out. You put these brackets in, the bracket goes in there. So in the thing it says it's quite a fiddly job. It's gonna be a pain. But anyway, that's a future problem. So we've got a transmission lifter here, which is currently dry, kind of just doing a test run to see how this fits in here. The water tank is not bolted in, but it's kind of loosely being held in place. As you can see here, the bolts that had to be undone are from the auxiliary fuel tank, which hold this bracket, which then connects to the straps that essentially hold this in place. All that's left to do now is cut some rubber strapping, as you can see here, anywhere basically that the metal on metal might contact, and then also under this one. I mean, not a particularly tough job. I'm very fortunate to have access to a transmission lifter and a hoist. First little problem encountered is these straps that hold in the tank. We're gonna have to do something here. I think we're probably gonna have to cut part of it off. We had to cut these straps down so they would clear this bar. But anyway, the end result is that it's in and it looks really good and it fits in there really nicely. So first job on the Troopy done. All right, so it's day 2 of the Troopy build. Kind of typical as expected with these kind of things. Day 1 didn't get nearly as much done as what I had hoped. So the underbody water tank is fitted below there. And then today can finally get going on the floor. But first I thought I'd pop up the Alu Cab roof conversion, and so you can see the extra space that is created inside basically. So as you can see, that took a couple seconds, really easy. This is now up, and you walk inside and you can see that the roof is down, but then it's just a matter of pushing this up, and that goes all the way up. And then if you have a look here, you can see just this little side part that goes up. And now I'm 6'4", and I mean, this is more than enough space to stand around in. And given that today we'll be working on the floor and going in and out a lot, I think it's a no-brainer to have that up. The first thing to get started with the floor is basically to take this floor protector up, and then I'm actually going to use that to trace out the floor pattern so that I can make sure that I get around the wheel arches nicely. And yeah, so you can see here, this will just lift straight up basically, and underneath will be the bare floor. This is what it looks like pre anything going in. So the floor mat is in 2 parts. So I've taken out the first part. Now this remaining one actually goes through and down under into the front seats. So I'm not going to remove that entirely. I think what I'll do is probably cut it about halfway. Okay, that was nice and quick. So that's now cut. I have gone with yellow tongue flooring. It's 19mm thick to do the floor today. I used this when I built the van floor. Was super happy with it, and seen quite a few other builds where people use this. So gonna go ahead with this. If we didn't have the rooftop conversion, I probably wouldn't go for something quite so thick, but given that we've got the extra headroom, I'm not too fussed now. So the plan now is to lay the flooring down that was already in the car, the rubber mat, and trace it out, then cut it and put it in. So I nearly made my first mistake of the build nice and early on. I put the floor mat down the wrong way, so the front was at the back and vice versa. And I traced it up and I looked at it and I thought, something doesn't look right here, and thankfully it clicked before I started cutting anything. All right, a bit of a pain, but the first piece is in, so let's have a look at it. See, it's in there. It was a little bit tricky getting it to go so nicely around this cover, but managed to get it in the end. Like with these kind of things, it's never quite as simple as just laying the mat down and going for it. So quite a bit of trial and error, but first one is in, so I'm super stoked. Piece number 2 is in. This one was a bit easier to cut. I just went 10 mil in all the way around from where I'd marked out on the mat, and it was a breeze, super easy. All right, so the floor is in loose. It's not being held down by anything. So 3 cuts to the yellow tongue, cut to size now. It's not millimeter perfect. I'm not too fussed about the parts that won't be seen, because on this side and on that side there's going to be, you know, things built on top, so it's just the middle aisle that's going to be clear. A bit of the floor that I kept at the front from the car's original, you know, rubber flooring, I will remove some insulation and then put and screw that down onto the floor. But for now, the plan is that I've got some Sikaflex, kind of haphazardly, and didn't check anything. I was fortunate that I didn't hit anything underneath the car with the van, but as you know, with the Troopy, there's 2 fuel tanks underneath, plus I've added a water tank underneath. So there's definitely areas which I could screw, but I'm not in the mood to screw into this floor. So I'm going to Sikaflex it. I've gone for a non-fast curing one because I want the Sikaflex to be not be super brittle. The fast curing ones are quite brittle, and obviously as this is going to go off-road, we want some flex. Another thing, you can let me know in the comments if you think it's a good or bad decision, but I'm not putting any insulation down. Again, when I built my van, I put down loads of insulation, did all the flooring, you know, from what I read on the internet, and I just think that in Oz it's not really necessary. From a heating insulation point, I'm not fussed even slightly, because the climate here is warm enough to not need insulation. And for sound deadening, there's just going to be an exposed aisle in the middle, which I will probably put some sound deadening in with that, but both sides are going to have, you know, a seats, couch and storage on one side, which will always be full, and then the other side will be the fridge, the kitchen, etc. So not worried about sound deadening. I have seen a previous video where somebody mentioned, you know, fill in the sides with some earth wool, so I could potentially do that, but for now just going to Sikaflex the floor down, and then that's job done for today. Nice. First panel in. Alrighty, there we are. Floor has been stuck down with the Sikaflex. So that's to dry now. Not going to do anything further until it's dried, so next stage will be starting to do some framing, but this is the part of the build that always kind of really, you know, it feels like that. I mean, obviously the build has just begun, but it really feels like it when the floor is in, because the foundation of the entire build has now been set, so couldn't be more happy. And then I will just put the plastic bar back, and the only other thing I've got to do is put some angle along here, because obviously that can't remain exposed. But what do you think, Layla? Good work? Solid job? So today I'm gonna cut some of the timber to build the frame inside. A few little small jobs to do, like the angle, which I'm about to do now. And then, yeah, finally the framing can begin. Gonna start with the left-hand side, which is gonna be the kitchen, house the fridge and whatnot. And then, if I've got time today, maybe start on the right-hand side. But first I've got to rip the timber. Got all the timber ready, tools ready. Inside's ready to be built now. I've got my trusty little plan here. It's just a quick sketch that I drew that I'm using as a rough guideline, and it's requiring me to change a few bits and pieces here as you kind of get a feel for how things are going to look. Whilst I was waiting for my batteries to charge, I thought I'd masking tape out the layout that I like, so I'm kind of having to adjust some stuff on the fly, but I fully expected that. I want to keep the build below the window line because I want to be able to keep the panoramic views that obviously all these windows create. So just trying to figure out what the right height is. I did see on another YouTube video a guy mentioned that a good level for a bench is 660, and that would come up pretty much flush with this. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I've got to account for the countertop, but I think that's a good height, so I think that's what I'm going to work towards. After much longer than expected, finally the first bit of the frame is now in. The first piece is in, and it's always so important, you know, to get this first one right, because if that's off, then chances are high that the rest of your build, you know, will be potentially jeopardized as that. But this is always such a fun part of the build, because finally the plans you have start to be realized. So after an incredibly long day, much longer than I anticipated, I've had to kind of readjust my framing measurements. So the whole frame had to come over by 50 mil to allow some extra space for the fridge. Then because I want to keep the line of the kitchen below, this bench below the window really, we've had to kind of change our plans, so there won't be a bench top that runs the whole length of this side anymore. The fridge will remain exposed on that side, but it's fine because it's also a hard, you know, countertop usable space. But yeah, that's been the last kind of hour or so, or 2 hours coming up with a plan for that. Now I'm just going to do a bit more framing, finish up for the day because it's getting dark. Finally going to call it for a day. As you can see behind me, part of the frame is in, not as much as I was hoping for, but as is the case with these things, it usually always takes longer than anticipated. Yeah, so I'll run you through it quickly. This area here will be a pull-out kitchen, which will come out like that, and then as you can see behind there is the fridge, and that's not in a permanent position yet. And then beyond that will be some more countertop space, maybe a sink. But yeah, so pretty happy with the day's work so far. That's a wrap on the first episode of the Troopy build. I'm off to London again, so the build will take a bit of a pause now, but I hope you enjoyed this first video. If you have, then please like and subscribe to watch the rest of the build. The later build videos will probably be out at the start of next year, but yeah, if you have any suggestions or feedback, also feel free to drop a comment, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video.